Shalom from Israel. I'm Ariel Ben Aram. This week we are going to reflect on chapter 19 of the book of Psalms by King David. Verse 1. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. What an introduction to a chapter. So David is saying, God is the creator of all, and his glory is reflected in his creation. Well, you have to take a look. Just addressing God, acknowledging and telling us also that God controls and directs his creation. Now, some will say, but we have free will. So ultimately we do what we want under what he wants, what he domains, what he rules. It may sound that way. Yes, he gave us free will. But he created us. So in that way we understand that he controls and rules his creation. Just like in other words, if we don't have air, suddenly there's no sun, no moon, then we have a problem here. This is what we're talking about, domain. It's like nature, the rules, the laws of nature. He created them. It's his creation, it's his world. Now we're here to manifest his will. What is his will? The goodness that he has created in us. He wants us to manifest it in what we are and what we do. That's God's will. Now, we have the choice to say, no, okay, it's not happening. What can we do about that? Next. Or for those who believe that, that's what we hear talking about these things, then we do that. By assuming that our essence and true identity is God's love. It's the goodness of God. We come from there. Therefore, we have to begin assimilating this principle, this belief, and start manifesting it in what we think, what we say, and what we do. If we believe in goodness as our essence and true identity. But if we don't, there's nothing to talk about here. Now, we share these thoughts because that's what King David is telling us in his reflections, among other things. So, the introduction is the heavens declare the glory of God. So we see creation and we say, wow. Now, the glory of God, what is the glory of God? What is the honor of God? We mentioned it before, the goodness that he makes visible, tangible to us in his creation. That's the glory of God, by the way. So we're not picturing an old man with a long beard, with a crown, people honor him. It's a typical image that we have as humans to try to understand and put God in a box. But it's not in Judaism. So therefore we have to understand the glory of God as an attribute, a quality in the way he relates to his creation. Then we see the glory of God everywhere. Wow, this is beautiful, this is good, this is awesome. That's the glory of God. The skies proclaim, or the firmament proclaim the work of his hands. We can see this. He made this, not us. There is an acknowledgement of humbleness, like, this is not my invention, this is not, we are acknowledging. David is teaching us to acknowledge this in order to find ourselves in God's creation. that we are part of Him. We are part of His creation. So He's putting the heavens and the spiritual world and the material world, like the heavens and the spiritual heaven, and then the firmament, the skies. So both of them, material and spiritual, are proclaiming God's glory, majesty, the work of His hands. Verse 2, day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge. We're talking about the sun, we're talking about the moon and the stars at night. Verse 3, they have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them. This is interesting because in the Jewish tradition, everything that God created has life. We may say, what about a rock? What about the moon? Yeah, exactly. But we live in a way that is not necessarily the kind of life that we know, like blood, like flesh, that kind of thing. They represent a level of life. So we see a rock, which is a dead rock, is nothing that is material, There's something there that corresponds to a different level of perception of us, from us, about the life in God's creation. So the life in God's creation is everywhere. It's not just in the vegetable and the animal and the human. It's everywhere. So when we see the sun is a creature of God. Like we say, but it's shining, it's a star, it's not a person. Of course it's not a person. It's the sun. The moon is not a person either. The sea, wind, earth. But they have their own life in the way God created it. And it's interesting because without the sun, we have said before, or the moon, we cannot exist. We know that. Some people don't know that. If they take the moon out, we are done. There's nothing here. Life in earth will cease to exist immediately, as well as with the sun and the wind and the water. So they have life of this in a way, and again, that is not biological life. It's a deeper spiritual life that we cannot perceive. We call it spiritual to say something abstract that we don't understand. We call it spiritual, or maybe we call it energy or something like that. But they have life. They don't have arm, they don't have blood, they don't speak. David is telling us, they don't say anything. They do God's will. So we may say, okay, the stars goes around, galaxies or whatever, like objects. That's how we see them, by the way. Inanimate objects, they're not necessarily inanimate. We can see a rock, okay, it doesn't move, it's inanimate. Yeah, we don't know what's going on inside. Maybe something's moving inside that we don't perceive. And we know that, by the way. So that we have to respect that humans are not the only, so to speak, intelligent creatures in God's creation. I mean, there's an intelligence in the moon, there's an intelligence in a rock that we don't perceive the way we understand it, because they're different than us. We can talk to the sun, it doesn't have ears, eyes, but it's there. David is telling us. They use no words, they have no speech, no sound, but they exist. So this is something going on. They move. The atom also moves, and it's like something automatic. By default, they exist. We have to understand that they also have some life. And again, what we were saying is that in the Jewish tradition, in the oral tradition, they refer to these other creatures creations in this case, like the moon and the sun and the winds and the sea and the water, as entities that communicate. So there have been dialogues between the water and God. It's like, why are you doing this? Why the waters from the heavens and the waters from the earth? And it's a discussion. Why we separate? They complain. The water complain in one of the midrashim. So why you separated? So we're supposed to be together, and then you put part of us in the heaven, part of us in the material world, and then there's a discussion between this. The moon and the sun, that they were equal. There were two suns, and then one was complaining, why two suns? We're supposed to have only one. It's like, what's going on? These people, these creations speak to each other. Now we remember all these fairy tales, that we see the moon, like this huge monster blowing, This is in their own way, they have their own life. A life, by the way. If they protect life, there's something life about them. So let's understand this also this way. They have no speech, they use no words, no sound is heard from them. But they fulfill God's will. That's for sure. Verse 4, they say, yet their voice is interesting because David seems to contradict himself. There is no sound in them. But then he said, just the voice, it's a symbolic way, obviously, what they do is the voice, goes out into all the earth. So in other words, in this way, the symbolic aspect of voice is like what they do. That's the voice. Okay, so their words to the ends of the world. In other words, David is telling us the sun, the moon, the star, they influence life in this planet. So their voice is what they do to us, what the sun does, what the moon does, the stars. Okay? In the heavens, God has pitched a tent for the sun. So in other words, David is saying symbolically, in an allegorical way, that God created also the sun. So he gave it a program, a tent, like a house. Okay. Verse 5, the sun, in this case, talking about the sun. It is like a groom, a bridegroom coming out of his chamber. So imagine the sun coming out. Wow, it's magnificent. If we try to see the sun as a person, so you see, it goes up at dawn, and then it's radiant. And we say, wow, it's beautiful. But when it sets, one of the most beautiful things that we see in this material world. The sun, the moon, the stars. So you say, in the heavens firmament, God has pitched a tent for the sun. It is like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, like a champion rejoicing to run his course, his way. And we see that. We see the sun coming up. It's like running from one point in the east to another point in the west. It's like running. So it's interesting that David so poetically describes the sun, the course of the sun. Verse 6, it rises at one end of the heavens and make its circuits to the other. We were saying before, east to west. Nothing is deprived from his warmth. Like, we feel the warmth, the heat of the sun. So nobody can escape it. I mean, we are outside. There's no way it's there. We can put our hands, but it's there. So nobody is exempt for the sun warmth. Yeah, indeed, the God shines for everyone, without exceptions, without asking. It's always there, and nobody escapes from it. Now, this is interesting. After this introduction, this is very, very important what David is going to say next. He says, the Torah, the law, the instruction of the Lord is perfect. So like after this introduction of all this, the firmament, the heavens, he said, the instruction of the Lord of God is perfect. So God has an instruction for everything He created, including us. And the Torah, the literal meaning in Hebrew of Torah is instruction, is perfect. Now, perfect, what is perfect? Completion, wholesomeness, all-encompassing. That's perfection. So there is nothing out. Everything is inside. So perfection, it doesn't necessarily have to be according to a perception of perfection. It's not about that. It's about completion. It's like nothing is out. Everything is complete, united, wholesome. So the thought of the Lord is perfect, refreshing the soul. So this is refreshing. We're talking about life. It's like revives the soul, gives life to the soul. It's like the source of energy, the vital source for life is the instruction of God. So we're saying His will. The statutes, like decrees, laws of the Lord are trustworthy. So we have to trust them. I mean, the way that we trust the sun coming every morning, that we have air, we trust the air. Of course we trust the air. Without the air we cannot live. We have to trust it. So if we go to a chamber that there is no air, we don't go in there, because we know that we cannot rely on anything to live because there is no air. But that we trust the air. It's interesting, if we trust the air to breathe every moment, why don't we trust God as well? After all, air is coming from Him. This is the paradoxes, the ironies, not paradoxes, the ironies of our consciousness. So we trust the sun that is coming tomorrow, and we trust the air because we breathe from it, with it. But we don't trust God. Sounds like absurd. So, the statutes of the Lord, God's will, are trustworthy, making wise the simple, the simpleton, the people who are not very knowledgeable. So it's like you don't need to be knowledgeable to know this. So like a simple person can understand this. It's common sense, basically. That's what this means. So, if we pay attention to God's will and observe nature and make these reflections, we become wise just by paying attention to God's creation as God's statutes, will, decrees. 8. The precepts, the commandments of God are right. It's like correct. I like the right thing to do. Makes sense. Do not kill. Do not steal. It makes sense. Honor your parents. Keep Shabbat. The Shabbat. That's right. Do not covet. Do not steal. Giving joy to the heart. So we're happy to be good. We're happy not to do wrong things, negative things. It makes us happy. Doing goodness makes us happy. Loving makes us happy. Those are the commandments of God. The commands or the commandments of God are radiant. It gives you radiant. Light. What is light? Goodness. What is light? Clearing our consciousness. What is light? Love's ways and attributes. What is light? Relief. What is light? Redemption. Are radiant. Giving light to the eyes. It sounds obvious. I mean, this is light and we are not blind. We see. We see the light. But again, we have to understand that seeing, we have mentioned this before, the semantic behind seeing is knowing. We have said that our sages in the Talmud relates seeing to knowing and hearing to understanding. So it's like when these commandments make us open our eyes, it's the light to our eyes, then we have to pursue the knowledge, the assimilation of what this means, of what goodness means. Giving light to the eyes is like giving knowledge to our understanding. Verse 9. The fear, usually here in this case, is reverence, it's respect, it's acceptance of God. The fear of God is pure. It's like when we accept God's will, we're pure. And pure is cleanliness. It's like we follow God's will, the goodness that we have been talking about, all these reflections. Then we became pure, clean. Because we're dealing with goodness. This is our cleanliness, by the way. Our purity. Enduring forever. This is what transcends in our consciousness. Goodness. Not negativity, not depression, not anger, not envy. What transcends is goodness. That's where we come from, and that's where we go back to. Enduring forever. The decrees of the Lord are firm, solid, and all of them are righteous, as we said before. Verse 10, they are more precious than gold, than much pure gold. So we're talking about anything beyond the material that we see, everything that could be good in the material world. God goodness transcends that because it's eternal. It comes from an eternal being that is God. So we have to see that beyond the materiality, the material perception that we have. They're sweeter than honey. It's just have references, gold, honey, things that we understand in our human consciousness as the best we can have in our consciousness, in the material consciousness. But David is telling us it's beyond that. Why? Transcends materiality. God is material, gold is material, honey is material. So David is telling you have to go further, beyond, transcend. Make transcend in our consciousness what is transcendent, which is goodness, coming from God's goodness. And God is transcendence, is God, it's beyond any limitations. More than the honey from the honeycomb. 11. By them, by the commandments that David is referring. Your servant is warned. It's like he knows, he's warned. It's like, don't do this negative. Don't go to negative traits and trends in consciousness. In keeping them, there is great reward. We're talking about reward, we're talking about the transcendence that he's talking about. Something that transcends the material consciousness and the material world. This is a reward that is beyond the material rewards that we may have. 12, what David asks, is a but. But who can discern the own sins, mistakes, errors? And ask God, David asked God, forgive my hidden faults. So there are things that we don't know that are in our subconscious and unconscious mind will make us do things that are wrong. And later we regret them and say, why did I do this? Why did I do this? So he's asking God, spare me from doing things wrong that I don't know that I'm doing. It's like the unwilling or unintended errors, mistakes. Verse 13, keep your servant also from willful things. Like, protect me from the things that I cannot control, my subconscious, my unconscious, my things that I do without consciousness, full knowledge. But also protect me for the ones that I do on purpose. Because we are prone to make mistakes and to make wrong decisions. So we have to be aware of that. May they not rule over me. So in other words, don't make me addicted to them, don't make me attached to them, don't make me obsessed by them, and don't make me be controlled by them. Because that's the problem that we have with negative patterns of behavior, negative thinking, negative beliefs, negative emotions, negative feelings. Like David is saying, protect me from those. Don't make me servants of them. Don't make me be under the dominion. It's a very important request that David is asking God, like, keep me pure, keep me in the goodness, keep me in what transcends life. So allow me, make me assimilate in my consciousness your will, your statutes, your commandments, your decrees, your goodness. May they not be rule over me. Then I will be blameless, of course. Will be in goodness. In goodness, there's no blame. Innocent of the great transgressions, the negative things. So I will be pure, because it's innocent from anything wrongdoing. Verse 14, may these words of my mouth and this meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, Lord, my rock and my redeemer. It's a beautiful sound that we recite every day in the Jewish prayers. It's important that we connect, we bond with God's goodness in every moment, so we found this meditation and these words pleasing. Because it's a bond, it's a connection. And then we are pleased and God is pleased. My rock and my redeemer. It's beautiful. Okay, with this we end our reflections on chapter 19 of the book of Psalms by King David. We wish you, as usual, an abundantly blessed week. Shabbat Shalom And until next week.